So Bernie Sanders has pretty much been a target to billionaire Howard Schultz, who's contemplating or really threatening a centrist independent run if the Democratic Party nominates someone supposedly on the far left, what he calls the far left. So he's been targeting Bernie Sanders, essentially threatening to jump in the race and spoil it if the Democratic Party nominates someone who he doesn't like, namely Bernie Sanders. So Bernie Sanders finally took the time to respond to Howard Schultz. And it's very clear, one, that he's not afraid of Howard Schultz at all, but two, he's not afraid to explain the very problem with Howard Schultz. The fact that we're all taking him seriously is a problem because it demonstrates that if you have money, then you actually do have political influence, and money shouldn't translate into political influence in a democracy, and that's problematic. So I'm going to play a clip from his interview on CBS. However, I can't actually show you the clip because every time I play you a CBS clip, even if it's fair use, I get a copyright strike. So I will give you the audio here, and then we'll discuss it.
Howard Schultz has now said he would not run as an independent if the Democrats nominate a moderate.
Oh, isn't that nice? But you raise a good thing. Why is Howard Schultz on every television station in this country? Why are you quoting Howard Schultz? Because he's a billionaire, all right? There are a lot of people I know personally who work hard for a living, who make $40,000, $50,000 a year, who know a lot more about politics than, in all due respect, does Mr. Schultz. But because we have a corrupt political system, anybody who is a billionaire, who can throw a lot of TV ads on television, suddenly becomes very, very credible. So what Mr. Schultz, what is he, blackmailing the Democratic Party? If you don't nominate Bernie Sanders, he's not going to run? Well, I don't think we should succumb to that kind of blackmail.
The other reason is that he represents an argument that some people make, which is if you're worried about Donald Trump, the Democratic Party, to win voters in various parts of the country, needs to pick somebody who is not so radical. That's also what his theory represents.
Well, I think his deeper theory is, hey, I'm a billionaire, leave me alone. And let me make as much money as I can without paying my fair share of taxes. And let me continue to have undue political influence, which you are quoting me. All right, here is a billionaire. No one's ever heard of this guy. Well, not many people have. He's a billionaire. He's thinking of running for president. Suddenly he's a very famous guy. That is a problem with our political system.
So that was pretty savage. Because Bernie Sanders, he says, look, with all due respect, I know people who aren't rich who know more than Howard Schultz. And I'm so glad that he pointed this out, because at the CNN town hall, even if it may have been harmful because they were essentially inadvertently promoting him, it really did demonstrate that Howard Schultz knows nothing about politics. He doesn't know anything about policy specifics, and by and large, he probably doesn't have really any more political knowledge than the average American. In fact, I think he probably has less, because if you have that much money, you've got to be more out of touch than the average person. So this guy's an idiot. And Bernie Sanders says, look, just because you have money doesn't mean that you're going to know what you're talking about automatically. But the fact that, we have this corrupt political system where anybody who's a billionaire who can run a lot of ads becomes credible, that's a problem. That's a huge problem. And the fact that he's able to essentially use his money and the fame that comes with having said money to blackmail the Democratic Party, it's disgusting. And Bernie Sanders responded to that, saying, what is he, blackmailing the Democratic Party? If you don't nominate Bernie Sanders, he's not going to run? Well, I don't think we should succumb to that kind of blackmail. Absolutely. And in a Washington Post article where Howard Schultz basically put out a challenge, more like a threat to Democrats, nominate a centrist and I won't run. Well, why would we succumb to that kind of threat? The same article said, well, the more moderate candidates like Joe Biden and Mike Bloomberg can kind of use that threat to their advantage and say, look, if you don't want a spoiler, if you want to defeat Donald Trump, then you should go with a moderate so he doesn't jump in and win. But why would we succumb to that kind of threat? So we can never have anyone who is even center-left. Bernie Sanders, if you look at this from an international perspective, he's center-left. So we can never get a center-left candidate because there's always going to be some billionaire asshole who's going to jump in or threaten to jump in and spoil the race. No, fuck that and fuck Howard Schultz. And I'm so glad that Bernie Sanders said this, and I'm so glad that he is not backing down and he's calling this what it is. It's blackmail. Now, additionally, he was asked about the argument, that if Democrats want to win, then they need to run someone who is not a supposed radical. And this is what Bernie Sanders says in response to that. Well, I think his deeper theory is, I'm a billionaire, leave me alone, and let me make as much money as I can without paying my fair share of taxes, and let me continue to have undue political influence. And Bernie Sanders, again, is exactly right. Howard Schultz doesn't really have any core political ideology. He has no really driving reasons that make him want to run for president other than, I'm a billionaire, please don't raise my taxes. If you do, I'm going to make sure that Donald Trump has 4 more years as president, or do everything I can to ensure that that's the case. And really, it's despicable. You shouldn't have influence only because you have money. Nobody would be taking him seriously, but the fact that he's a billionaire and can basically buy his way into the race and even subvert the two-party duopoly, that speaks to how influential people with wealth are. It speaks to how disgustingly broken our campaign finance system is. Because if you want to run for president, you shouldn't be able to self-finance your way into the race. You should be forced to raise money via grassroots, and self-financing should be completely eliminated. And I really hope that Howard Schultz sees all of the enthusiasm and momentum that Bernie Sanders has. More than 100,000 individual contributions in day one, and more than $1 million. You may be able, Howard, to buy your way into the race and have the media take you seriously because you're a billionaire, but you will never have that level of grassroots support because you're not with us. Bernie's with us, and we know that he's actually fighting for things that would benefit our lives, and you'd only be fighting for things that would benefit your life and benefit the lives of people who are millionaires and billionaires. Well, I say fuck that and fuck you, Howard Schultz.
Girly Mike Fettuccine needs your support on Patreon. What a loser. Visit patreon.com/Humanist Report to support the low ratings Humanist Report. Sad. My views are much higher.